Welcome. I'm Sarah Barker.
And I'm Gabi gminnesbrandes.
And we are very excited about sharing this little project we've done where we've recorded ourselves teaching and watched and shared our own sense of our teaching. So we've been comparing ourselves and the way we teach differently and finding the places where there's a similarity.
So many of you know that teaching is a very isolated adventure where usually it's the teacher and the student, even when you teach in a class. But what we did here was we really exposed our teaching and ourselves to each other, which means that we really trust one another. Although we know each other professionally, we know each other well enough to know that we can trust sharing what we do and learning from watching ourselves and watching each other. And the best part was talking about it.
So we're excited to share this with you, but first we'd like to introduce ourselves mainly about how we had our beginnings with the Alexander technique and how we've gotten to where we are today.
So I was a high school teacher, and then I was doing my master's in education and curriculum and instruction. And I had a little bit of a break. I was on sabbatical and on maternity leave. And with the suggestion, advice, and cajoling of my mom, I got a gift of 2 Alexander lessons. And I had them 2 days in a row, a Sunday and a Monday. I had them with Rika Cohen in Haifa in Israel. And after the second lesson, I said to Rika, I think I will never have enough private lessons to actually get it the way I want. I think I should just start the training course. And so after 2 private lessons that were at the end of March, by September, I was in the training course. I trained with Rika Cohen and Nili Bassan in Haifa over 30 years ago. And over the years, I moved from living 2 parallel lives in education and in Alexander technique to finding ways to connect the two. For a long time, I taught in the Faculty of Education and had an Alexander private practice. And then and in education, I trained people to become teachers, and I did a lot of research in schools. And then the connections to Alexander became so apparent and obvious. So I opened and co-directed a training course in Vancouver, and I started looking for ways to teach Alexander technique in a post-secondary context. And I was invited to teach in a theater department where I taught for quite a while. And then slowly my research and all my teaching became variations of Alexander technique for actors, performers, musicians, and in my private practice. And at the beginning, I was a member of STAT and CANSTAT, and then AMSAT. And then at some point, I decided to look into ATI and see what that was all about. And that's where I found Sarah. We were actually presenting at a conference together. And then slowly I got more and more intrigued with what was happening in yet another organization of Alexander teachers. And I became a member and became more actively involved in sponsoring beginning teachers, and asked Sarah to dance this dance with me. So here we are.
Well, I got introduced to the Alexander technique 50 years ago. Like Gabriella, I was very young, and I was at an international movement institute for actors and was introduced to the technique by Marjorie Barstow, who taught us every day for more than a month. And very soon after that, as I was continuing to pursue my master's in fine arts in acting, I was invited to join her first teacher training in 1972. And by 1974, I was graduated, and I was looking for jobs as a movement specialist, an acting teacher, and having the ability to teach the Alexander technique. And I continued that, and mainly identifying myself as a movement specialist who also taught Alexander technique. And then I've run a couple of graduate acting programs, teaching acting as well, teaching Shakespeare acting as well. And then pretty late in my career, 2006, I decided I needed to seek out Alexander technique organizations. I had attended the Congress in 1986 and met all of the master teachers, senior teachers, and realized there were many different ways to teach the Alexander technique. So then, joining ATI in 2006, I started being exposed to lots of different ways of teaching. And then I joined AMSAT in 2014 and had the opportunity to work with people from all different directions, and including people trained by Patrick McDonald, and saw that these are very different approaches, but we're still teaching the same thing. So when I have the opportunity to look at Gabriella's teaching and my teaching and see where they converge and where they are very different, I was very excited, because we do trust each other and we have great respect for each other. So this conversation is something I'm really looking forward to sharing with you.
Well, I was thinking about watching myself teach, watching you teach, having our conversation yesterday. And it seemed to me that maybe we see our role as a teacher slightly differently. I will speak about how I see my role, and then I'll patiently wait and see what how you respond to that, and then we'll see where we go.
Yeah.
Bottom line, as Alexander said, we're working with re-education. So education and thinking is really at the bottom of both our work, I think. So when a student comes in for a lesson, I see my job as providing a stimulus, and the stimulus could be small or big, it doesn't really matter. So I provide the stimulus, and the stimulus could be related to the story the student said at the beginning of the lesson. So I provide the stimulus. For example, I'd like you to get out of the chair, or I'd like you to raise a hand, or whatever, or what time is it? And then the moment of switching from my giving the stimulus to the student noticing their response. So the game we play is I give the stimulus, and you, student, your job is to notice how you react. What is your habitual response? What is your automatic response? What's your habit? And then together we figure out what to stop, what the choices are, and how to direct. And that sequence comes in different varieties when I teach. So how would you speak about how you see the dance between you and the student?
I think that I am teaching them to investigate and discover when they respond to a stimulus. So they're going to find out what their own stimulus is in any particular situation. And I'm waiting, or I'm nudging and looking for them to say, oh, I do that here. Oh, there was a stimulus. To even discover that they have a stimulus that they respond to with a habit. That's what I'm waiting for them. I'm holding back for them to discover, oh, I can analyze myself and I can notice a reaction, a habitual reaction to this or to that. I don't give them a particular stimulus. Now, that is an exercise I sometimes use to heighten the stakes and give them like a group, a big stimulus, and let them say, oh yeah, that's a stimulus that made it really obvious. But I think that I'm teaching them to observe, discover what stimuli are acting on them in life. And then I'm asking them to, well, what would you do about that? Now, in the first lesson, I'm giving a lot of information about the ways that you can improve or change your reaction. But then I'm doing a lot of, well, you try it. Now, how did that go? What did you notice? So I do think there's I don't know if I can call it subtle, but there is a distinction between what your job is and what my job is as teachers.
Right.
I think.
Right. Right. We definitely have this conversation as a follow-up to seeing what happens. So now, even later on, I often provide a stimulus, although this, as I said, the stimulus can come from something that the student brings in. But it is the allowing the student the time to, or the structure or the space to see that there is a cycle of stimulus response, and the stimulus could come in internal or external, and it's easy to highlight it when I provide it. Yes. As I said, get out of the chair, lift an arm, speak. There's your phone is on. What happens when that happens? And then we together look at what to stop and how to move with direction, or what happens to movement when it's less directed or more directed, with hands on, without hands on.
I think that as we get more into the detail of it, I think they fold in on each other.
Yes.
So I start in one place, you start in another, and I'm responsible for this and you're responsible for that. But as we continue to unfold the lesson or work with the student, I think we kind of crisscross.
Absolutely, absolutely, which makes it so rich and fun.
Yes.
Great. Now, right now, the easy part is live it.
Okay, yeah.
Okay, and then by live it, I mean be clear on the moments of choices. Where am I holding? Why am I holding here? Can I get there in a new way?
Mm-hmm.
All right, so now I would like to invite you to think up along the spine, think up along the spine. Don't go back. Do you feel it?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so that was preparation for sitting,
Mm-hmm.
right? Okay, let me slide back. Now, do you need to slide back in order to sit? I would say the answer is no. What you need is a decision. You need to take the head forward and up and then send the knees and then hinge. Right? If you start with it, with going back to your heels, you're actually losing your balance.
That's where my toes come in.
That's where the toes come in, right?
Yeah.
All right, so thinking up along the spine. Wait.
Mm-hmm. I felt that again.
Great. All right, so that's stimulus response.
Okay.
Stimulus response. And we want to stop that. The stimulus is you're going to sit. Your response is being now tightening your mid back, moving to your heels. So I'm going to give you the stimulus. You're going to bend your knees or sit or whatever I will say. And your job is to say, I'm going to send my knees away.
Okay.
I'm going to think up. I'm not going to sit the old way. Any of those. Okay, so thinking up along the spine, thinking up along the spine. And I'm going to just change my mind and say, come up to your toes. Stand on your tippy toes, leading with the top of, okay. And now have the heels lead the way and quickly bend your knees. What do you think?
Yeah, I like that. There's a fun extra step you added.
Yeah, yes, it's somehow to highlight choice and what we do when we pause, where we redirect. I mean, you could choose to sit or not at any moment. Thinking up, thinking up, thinking up. And now tippy toes. and go back to the heels on the floor. And I just want to say one thing about tippy toes. Can you think about coming up to your tippy toes without moving the hips forward? No, without moving anything forward, as if you were against the wall. Now come up right there. That's it.
Whoa.
And now heels to the floor and quick bend.
Okay.
All right, let me work on this one. So it's always connected to the whole coordination. So your neck is free. Yeah, you can move it any way you want. You don't have to hold it in any position. And then just that little thought of your head releasing forward and floating up to invite the whole spine to follow. That's great. That then allows us to include the idea of widening, expanding, letting the back come back, and the torso expand. How's that with this shoulder now?
It feels similar to the other one, I think.
So now let's look at leaning forward
Uh-huh.
from the hip joints by directing your head to move delicately away. That's great. And we're adding just a little expansion or releasing outward, widening as you lean forward. I'll help you here and you go right ahead. Yeah, find those hip
It's like,
joints.
where are they?
Where are they? Right. You know, yeah, come on back again. Let's do that one more time.
Okay.
I would say press back just a little bit here to follow the upward direction of your head, and now you'll just be able to fold them. Yeah. See, probably doesn't feel like anything. So again, leaning back, same thing. And forward again. Now, when you lean back, don't push back. Let your head release upward, let your spine lengthen, and just open at the hip joints. Everything else is going up. Yeah. And right here, you can let your back release back toward my hand or press back as your head goes up. That's it. And then put your hands on your legs. What kind of impression does that give you?
I do feel more lengthened, almost like there probably is more space between each vertebra.
That's good news. So we're talking about inhibition now. And I got a few little snippets from your teaching and my teaching that I think represents some of the way that we approach inhibition. Now, the very beginning of mine, I think you and I have already talked about the way I described Mr. Alexander's, what he noticed, what he discovered, is something we both agree on. But then I think the way that your lesson began is it really shows something about where inhibition comes in your pedagogy and in your teaching. Would you talk about that?
I'd love to, of course. But it's interesting that you frame it this way. Until we videotaped and I shared the video with you and we chose the clips and we talked about it, I don't think that I would speak about it in the way I am going to speak about it now. So just a little bit of context, because it was one lesson and we dissected it in different ways. So the sequence of the lesson is different. So just to explain what happened just the minute before. So we were working on getting in and out of the chair and noticing our habits. And to be specific, the student's habits, as she gets in and out of the chair. And it was the first time I've taught her, but she had some other Alexander lessons before, and she knew to identify her habit of throwing her head back. And so after she's done a few getting in and out of the chair with my hands on, with my giving her the stimulus and her responding, I said, okay, we'll heighten the stakes. We'll make it, do it the best way possible. And when I said it, although she doesn't know me well, I knew that I could sort of use humor. And I said, it's a trap for you and me. And then I made reference to the fact that it was recorded. In other words, I wanted it to matter, because when it matters, our habits kick in more so that we can actually catch ourselves. And the idea was to put this trap. And then immediately I said, okay, we'll find the place where you go wrong. And this is where I use humor, because I don't want it to be, don't go wrong. On the contrary, we want to go wrong so that we can catch what we do habitually, unconsciously. And so the trap, and I made a fuss around the trap so that we know that stakes are high. Let's see what happens. And as soon as Brittany, the student, got out of the chair, my question was, so what do you think? And this is the thing that the two of us do a fair bit of that was fun to realize. So in order to work on inhibition, we need to know what it is that the student has to stop. And I don't want to name it for her. I want to create the structure and the circumstance for her to notice what she needs to stop. So this is the trap. And this is how she finds the trap, so that the second time, and then we speak about this, so the second time she could be monitoring to see the moment of oops, the moment of tightening, so that she can choose not to do it. So that's my approach to inhibition. And I actually use it a fair bit. It's not the first time I've done it, probably not the last time I will do it. And it's a way to highlight for the students where they have to take over and stop something that they do unconsciously, make it conscious so that they can choose to do it differently.
My sense of it is that to compare to the weight of inhibition that I have in my teaching, your teaching is really structured as that's crucial and central, I think. You'll be able to talk about more how you perceive it in balance with directions, but I can talk about my own. And that is what I'm showing in this little clip is a moment where we've been working for quite some time. And I haven't done a lot of pointing out or asking her to catch herself. But now I feel like after I've laid the groundwork, after she's starting to explore and have some experiences of how her thinking can change her movement in a positive way, I need to include this idea of stopping, catching the habit and replacing it with direction. And I think that is subtly, at least, different than what I see you teaching, which is increased awareness of more and more where we go into our habit and really getting good at catching where there's that, oh, there's another habit. Oh, that's another one. And I think we both want the student to identify it for themselves. But what I wait, and you use humor to keep them from getting really intensely on what they've done wrong. And I think that what I'm doing is giving her directions. And now, where are you interfering with that? Can you say, no, not going to do it my old way? And that a little bit has come from my learning about neurological systems and how when we think I'm going to pick up a cup, our hand is already in the shape of the cup. So it's completely out of our consciousness. the brain is preparing us for the activity we think we're about to do. And that what I'm introducing is this idea that, okay, I'm not going to stand up. I'm going to do something different. I'm going to fold or unfold. So inhibition is in there in that little moment where you realize what you think you're going to do and how you prepare. But now we're going to spend a lot of time on substituting a different direction, a different image of what I'm about to do. Does that make sense in terms of a different?
Oh, it makes perfect sense. And there are two comments that I have. One is, for me, inhibition is not just pausing.
Right.
It is stopping something very specific that I need to know so that I can choose not to do it. So inhibition definitely relates to choice and to direction, to understanding what to stop and then choosing something else. And the idea of options that you mentioned that is very important will come up in the clip where, I think it's in the clip of sit to stand, where I have the student plan to stand and then I change my mind, or I say to her, okay, let's go on your toes, just to see that preparation for standing and that we can change our minds and do something else.
Yeah.
And
I
then
think
definitely
that
go to
the
sitting.
difference between the catching, the habit, and a pause is a real distinction.
Yes, yes.
I think there's more precision in what you're looking at with the student. Yeah, it's more precise.
Well,
for-
it's very specific. It's
Yeah.
really specific. Yes. Yeah.
and
And fun.
really great.
That's working nicely. Now I'm going to say stand up.
Okay.
And what I want you to do is refuse, because you have a little trigger. When I suggest you lean forward or stand up, you do a little like, "Brr," right?
Okay.
So what I want you to do is say, have some fun and just refuse. There's probably very few times in your day that you get to say, no, not gonna. So in this case, Mr. Alexander noticed that the moment we think of doing something, our whole nervous system gets ready.
Okay.
And
That
so
makes
what we're
sense.
doing is inhibiting that get ready, because that get ready is your old way,
Okay.
right? So you just say, because let's lean forward, and your first thought is no. I'm gonna go back to my neck being easy, my head moving up, my spine lengthening, folding, okay. So it slows it down and it takes out that little bit of habit.
So I'm going to put a little trap, and we'll see if we fall into that trap. Other than the big trap called Zoom, I'm going to ask you to get out of the chair perfectly, trap perfectly. And what I'd like you to do when you get up, I'll say, what did you notice, or what did you think, or what happened? Probably ask all three.
Okay.
Okay, go for it. Okay. So we're both alive, and you're standing. Mission accomplished, goal achieved. What did you notice? What did you see? What happened?
I tried to, from my previous Alexander technique experience, kind of lead with my head going forward, but I know I have a tendency to break the neck in the back of it, and I actually did feel that. when I
Okay,
did
so you
stand up.
felt that you had an intention, which was, I'm going to get up with full length.
Yes.
But then somehow something happened midway, and oops. Okay, so let's find the oops spot. In other words, we're going to start the movement, and if you or I feel, I'll have my hands on you, and you'll feel my hands. If you and I feel at some point that you're going back to habit, or Alexander language, you're stopping to inhibit, or something changes with your coordination, I'm going to say stop, or no, or something to that effect.
Okay.
And we're just going to be at a moment of freeze to catch the moment where basically autopilot kicks in, where you stop thinking and this happens.
Mhm.
Because your intention when you started was not to do that.
So what did you see in the sit to stand?
Well, in my sit to stand, what mattered to me was a combination of a few things. One is, what did she notice? And what she noticed was that in order to maintain a direction, she had to use opposition, which she hadn't thought of before in this way. So it gave me an opportunity to speak a little bit about that. But then the bigger context was not end gaining. Stand with an idea of process as opposed to doing it perfectly. And so I spoke a little bit about end gaining, and then I spoke about making choices that are different from the habit. And what she, and then of course, going back to her thoughts. And what she said was, I needed opposition in order to maintain my length or my direction. And the other thing that was interesting, sort of as a little aside, was that although it was her first lesson with me, very quickly we had a connection through hands. She understood, she read my hands, which I have to applaud her, because we really didn't know one another. 5 minutes before the lesson, I'd never met her in my life. We just had an email exchange. So the fact that she was very receptive, I think, is a tribute to her being open to learning.
What I noticed, and this probably came out of comparison as much as anything, though I'm not in the habit of watching myself teach, so that was also unique. But I was so slow. And what I was doing is I was putting my hand on one part of the body, another part of the body, and I was looking for her to stimulate or initiate direction in her body, improved coordination. And I would not move faster than she was moving. I would encourage her if she changed toward the positive, she got more balance, more length, more expansion. But it was really me in a support position and asking her to let the thinking change how she was doing it. I think there was as much change that came from her understanding the directions as her substituting a new idea that she was going to fold and unfold. So that changed her. So it got rid of her habit. So the habit fell away, and she could continue to improve her direction as she moved. But I was following her thinking, reading what she was doing with my hands. And if I may, I want to contrast what I saw, something that I really appreciate. I've got to start exploring it. And that is, your hand is often on the neck and the hip. So you're not just helping one piece join the others. You are affecting a complete coordination. And I know that you're directing the legs out as well. You're asking her to send her knees away, but you're also, with a hand on the hip and a hand on the head, you've got the whole thing going. So just as you said, you are giving her complete support so she could really trust you. And again, I see that as a difference. And I would be delighted to try the other one out more.
And it seems to me, from the point of view of tempo, I go fast so that she doesn't have time to tighten, so that she can move and feel the length and width and coordination.
Yeah.
So it's not by accident. And there was a point in the lesson where I said, we'll do it super slow to catch where you're holding, and then to allow you to release. So I don't mind doing things slowly, and sometimes I take forever, but when we go fast, it is so that once she has a nice relationship between the head, the neck, and the back, and Alexander speak, I would say, I have her back, then I can move her with ease and she can experience the width and length and smooth, as she said, seamless movement,
Yeah.
which I craved at the beginning of the lessons. I'd never had that before.
That's great.
And so-
Yeah, and I think I'm going slow, so her thinking has space to occur.
Right, right. And for me, the thinking comes as she has completed it. It's true.
Right, right.
So, one more time, starting with letting the neck be free. And coming up inside of you. That's good. So, the idea of coming up out of the chair is there. We both know you will get out of that chair if you or I choose that. But you don't have to move forward at the moment at all. Feel my hands here, my thumbs in particular. Hello? Feel my thumbs?
Yep.
Okay, keep your back with my thumbs. You take care of taking the head to lead and go.
That was pretty seamless.
Right. And why was that? Wait, don't think. So why was it seamless?
The thought of opposition actually really helped
Yeah.
that time.
Alexander language, antagonistic forces or opposition, because it takes us away from focusing so much on the end.
Mhm.
Alexander language of end gaining. Right?
Hmm.
So opposition is really a way to think of how the parts within us interact with one another and how we interact with the world around us. Not that we oppose the world, but that we have opposing forces.
So again, easy neck, head moves up, and please lean forward. Great, well done. Continue to lean forward, and yes, you're moving already, so go right ahead and continue. That's it. Folding, and now go right ahead and stand up, and you say, no, I'm not going to stand
No.
up. I'm going to follow my head and my spine.
There's no like push.
That's right.
Okay.
What do you think? You like that?
Mhm.
Same deal with sitting. So you discovered your habit is
Mhm.
putting your hips back.
Okay. Yeah.
So if I ask you to sit down, and I'll do that from behind you, you're going to say no.
Okay.
What I'm going to do is I'm going to go up and fold or
Okay.
release, however you want to think of it. The directions are neck free, head moving delicately forward and up to invite the whole spine. More and more of you is starting to follow. And as your hips start to follow, you could sit down. You say no.
No.
And then you fold when you're ready. Yeah, we're finding a completely new way to sit.
Mhm.
What do you think?
I think it's good. I think habits die hard though.
That's right.
I titled this Teaching
It's better.
with Activities because you said something when we were talking about it the other day that I really took to heart. And that was you weren't teaching singing. You weren't even teaching breathing.
That's right.
Could you say what you were doing? Because it was so clear.
What I knew about Brittany is that she is a singer. And what she said when she came into my office was she was really worried about the beginning grad school. So I would never start at a place where the student is stressed, especially when they don't know me. So that was why I did not want to go into singing and breath day one. But at the same time, the beauty of using sound is that you have some external indication of what's happening within us, which really, as we all know, FM Alexander used all the time. He paid attention to his voice. If he had his voice, he knew things were coordinated. Didn't have his voice, something was wrong. And so I knew that if we used voice, or movement of air or breath, we could have some external indication if there was direction and coordination. So what I asked Brittany to do, I said, I will be responsible for moving you. You will give permission to move with me, and you will make sound. And if the sound flows all the way through the movement from sitting to standing or from standing to sitting, we know that the direction is there, that you're coordinated, and that the air can flow with ease. And so the voice served us as an indication of tight, release, held, let go, and freedom. And so that was what I was looking for. And she could have some way of gauging if she was directing, if she was being present in the moment. And when we analyzed it midway, she said, well, when I thought about using my voice, I tightened. My eyes were open, and basically I was scared. And then she saw, to her surprise, that she could do it with ease if she attended to the means whereby, would be Alexander's language, or if she attended to a process as opposed to chasing a sound. That's why I didn't call it breath work or voice work, but a way to notice if we're directing or not.
Yeah, so that's attending to the process and seeing that that's going to affect the activity.
Yes.
I think my teaching with an activity is a mix of discovering, oh, when I use my direction, I can actually improve the way things go if I commit to, if I stick with the process. But the other bit that I'm doing a lot of teaching with is, can she be very good at analyzing? Well, gosh, when I do this, I pull down, here's the habit I'm doing. Do I need to do it that way? Oh, I should sit up straight? No. What are the many different ways that you can find to do this activity, whatever it is, in this case, reading your cell phone, that brings in direction, catches habits, but gives you, as I say at the end, lots of options. So I think I'm teaching as much about, you need more options. You need to be making more choices. There's not a right way to do this. At the same time, I think maybe I'm indirectly saying, and look what happens when you use your directions. So
I think it's actually a really interesting difference, that the way I use the word choice is choosing something outside of the habit and choosing a well-coordinated way of moving, we'll call it, or connecting thought and movement in a way that is outside of the habit, as opposed to what are different ways of doing the activity. And I think that is consistent in this lesson and in many other lessons, which leads me to think that I can explore other choices. And when I think we both ask the students to analyze, and my analysis focuses on, what did you recognize as a habit or as an unconscious movement, and where can you add thought of direction, process, coordination, head, neck, back relationship? Where do you notice that you tighten, and where can you release, as opposed to?
Well, I think what I'm asking for is, what did you notice? What kind of impression did that give you? What did you notice? Or what do you think? So I'm asking for them to actually look at their experience and give them either confirmation that they're going in the right direction, or that their thinking isn't taking them into greater freedom. So it is different what I'm looking for, but we're both asking for the student to be author.
Right, and to observe and analyze.
Yep.
And I think we both do it very systematically.
Yep.
So we can count the number of times each one of us says, so what do you think?
Right.
What did you notice? These two things appear so many times in both our lessons. It's so fun to see.
And to me, that indicates that we're student-centered, that we're really interested in the student gaining power, skill, ability, not that we're teaching them the right way to do something.
Agreed.
And I think that might come from our education background as well.
Very possible.
And the fun thing with working with voice is it's not going to be anything scary or dramatic or anything hard. I hope that's my intention. The fun thing with working with voice is that you have a great indication if you're thinking up or not. Because if we think about the breathing apparatus as a hose, when the air flows without interruption, we have a full voice. But any kind of tightening, we hear it immediately.
Immediately, yes.
So this is an exploration of air moving. And we'll see. So as I move you from standing to sitting, all I'm going to say is bend your knees. I may say bend your knees, please. And what I want you to do is I would like you to choose a note, choose a vowel, and carry that note however you want from standing to sitting. Knowing that if there's any, knowing that what we hear will give us some indication of what's happening with how you use your.
So I stay on the same note?
You can, and if you want a couple of notes, that's fine too. If
Okay.
you want a phrase, that's whatever.
Mhm.
All I want is continuous sound. That's the only thing I really am interested in at this moment. All
Okay.
right. So let the neck be free. This is exploration in air moving to create sound. And bend your knees, please. As you bend your knees, you make some sound. What do you think?
There was a moment of like, oh no, what's happening? Yeah.
That was just the second
Before
free sound.
Yeah.
And do you have any idea of what it meant? If we did we went back to that moment,
Mhm.
what would we see?
You probably see my eyes widen,
Yeah.
like a panic, and no, the note may be kind of choking a bit,
Right.
and
What would I see in the head and neck?
probably this.
That's-
Yeah.
Okay, just don't do that.
Okay.
Okay, so here are some tricks. I'd like you to start singing in your head a couple of seconds before you sing to the world.
Okay.
In other words, what we hear is sort of the second note, because the one is ringing in your head.
Mhm.
The other thing I'd like you to think about, I'm going to maintain my head forward, no matter what.
Okay.
Okay, we're going to do the same from sitting to standing.
Tell me more about the sensation of effort or no effort.
With this way, it does feel like there's more effort in the arms,
Yeah.
because you're holding a weight. It's not a
Mm.
very heavy weight,
Right.
but if you do this, you're not holding a weight with your arm muscles.
That's right.
So this way, it feels good for my neck and my back and my torso, but it's like, I feel like if I did this for a long time, my arms would be like, oh,
I agree. I
Yeah.
agree. I wonder where it could be.
mhm.
So I understand why this is the right place to put it. So you
Yeah.
don't do that. But if you can trust yourself
Mhm.
because you're developing this new
Mhm.
direction, what if you could look down like this? What are all the, and in fact, what if you could do it this way?
Oh, like leaned forward.
Yeah.
Yeah, that definitely doesn't have weight on my arms, but
What I notice is the
Yeah.
curve
the
here,
curve here, yeah.
right? So that's okay. Come on back.
Maybe this is better.
That seems good.
Because that feels less stressed on these muscles.
Yeah.
When I do like that, there's more tension in these muscles.
Right.
But when I do like that, there's less tension in these muscles.
So let's try both of those. Come on
Okay.
back here. Lift the phone up just as a place to come from. Free your neck. Let your head move delicately away, your whole spine lengthen. And now drop the arms to where it's easy to have it. And then let your head turn to see it. Can you see it there?
Yes.
And now you could do that. Or we got a couple options. How about leaning forward from your hip joints? Remember to say no.
No.
Free. Head moves up. Now lean forward because of the upward direction. And put your hands on your legs where, yeah, keep leaning forward a little bit more. There you go.
Mm-hmm.
Neck free, head moving up. There we go. Even that opens up.
Mm-hmm.
And then take it all the way out and rest on your legs. Continue up, lengthening. So look at all the options.
Yeah.
So that isn't curling and that isn't bringing the shoulders in. Now, come on back. Wait.
Okay.
So when I say come on back, what do you say?
No.
Okay, lean back. There we go. And choose. So you have choice.
Mm-hmm.
Following that, the other piece that we share, I think, is that we see the concepts and principles as really intertwined. So then we teach direction as it relates to inhibition. We teach direction and inhibition as they relate to coordination. We teach the head, neck, back in relation to movement. So it seems to me that it's because we've been teaching for so long. No offense to anybody other than the fact that we have been doing this for a very long time, that we see how these principles come together in anything that we do with students. And it's actually beautiful to see. So that we don't teach primary control, inhibition, direction, but we see how they all intertwine. When the focus changes, when we want to pedagogically highlight something for the student, but we see those as integrated framework of moving and thinking, which is the way I see the technique.
Yeah. I don't know if I can articulate this, but I think we're pretty wily now that we've been teaching this long, is we know some of the traps that are very normal and typical. There is one that we're not seeing a video of, but where my student says, oh, I feel like somebody who has a back injury. And knowing that often people either say, oh, I feel very high status, or she said, I feel like an actor. So she kept finding people or images that she was not, that as she was changing her identity through her body's different experience, she was relating it to these other things. And a lot of my teaching has to do with sort of dispelling either the concept that I got to hold this, or, oh, this means I'm in good posture, or this idea that, oh, I'm conveying something I'm not sure I want to convey. So that, I think we're both aware of that. That's
Yep.
one. There are other ones. I can't think of them right now.
Well, I had a student a long time ago who was very young, and she said to me, when I do what I think you ask, I am regal and I've not earned it yet, so I don't think I can do it.
Yes.
That was exactly my reaction.
Yeah. I've hit that many a time as well. Yeah, and then our job is to give them permission to think of it in a different way.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Another thing I wanted to talk about a little bit more, and again, there's not going to be video about this, was how much time I spent at the beginning of my lesson on anatomy. And I mean, where and what is the shape of your spine? Where is it in your body? Where is the top of your spine? How does your pelvis look, and where are your sit bones? If we continued lessons, I would also be helping her find where her knees bend, where her ankles connect to her feet, how the arm unit connects to the rib cage. And to me, that gives me and the student a foundation for me knowing that when I ask her to invite her spine to lengthen, she knows where it is. Instead of her, as she says in the beginning of the lesson that we did, that she always thought of it on the back of her back. And she realizes now, oh, it's in the middle. So that for me is always initial. It's at the beginning of lessons, in the beginning of teaching a student, that we really get clear about accurate structure. I think you include anatomy, but I think it's different.
Very different. I would say, I don't want to say never, but I hardly ever would start with anatomy. I always start with some sort of activity. Well, to start off, I always walk behind my students when they walk into my office, and I observe like a hawk. And that oftentimes gives me some starting point of what I saw. But I always ask students to do something. And then when we unpack it, I go to the anatomy. So the anatomy discussion that I have is always embedded in understanding how they moved. And so I pull the skeleton, Charlotte, in my office, and I show different books, and I show on me and I show on them things that relate to the activity that we just did. So whether it's the arm in relation to the ribs in relation to breath, it would come from a gasping. Or if somebody, when they move from sitting to standing, holds their hip joints, which is super common, I would speak about where the joint is and where the movement comes from and what we need to do with our thinking in order to create the length and width and depth that we want. So I use anatomy as in the service of understanding movement and understanding what to change, what to keep, and what to let go of, and what to start. I would love to speak a little bit about the tempo or the rhythm in teaching, because when I see the two of us, well, first of all, when I see you teach, I'm very calm. So there's something super, not soothing, but really creating trust in the tempo with which you move. So, and in the tempo in which you request things of the student, where I go more like a whirlwind, which is more like me. But I think that it serves a pedagogical consideration. What I would like the students, and probably comes from how I felt in the first lessons, I would like to create a situation where the students will feel that they're able to move with ease, that they don't have time to tighten, that they don't have time to think about the way they always do it and create whatever tension they bring with. So when I have my hands on students, whether I have my hands on their neck and back or wherever they are, wherever my hands are, when I have a sense that the student is well coordinated under my hands, I will move my hands quite quickly, so that I will invite them to move quite quickly. And then we think. So sometimes when they know me well, and we've done that a few times, and they have a sense of what it is to move with ease, or what it's like to move with ease, then we go slowly and maintain that length and width and depth. and continuously directing as we do that. But I often at the beginning will use surprise, will use speed in order to allow for something different to occur so that students notice what it's like to move with ease.
I think, yeah, and I think what I'm doing is creating room, time for conscious intention now and now and now. And so that I'm encouraging or I'm nurturing, I think I'm nurturing a conscious choice or an ability to think into a new quality of moving. And I don't know, we need hours over wine to sort this out.
Yes, and hands-on, my goodness.
Yeah, yeah. I want to say that this has been a wonderful experience for me. I know that you and I have worked a lot on some other projects, which we also find really enrich our teaching. But this is, I think this one's going to last me for a long time. I'm going to continue to think, what if I did it this way? What if I tried that? And also just so happy that we can have very different ways of going at it, and they both be very treasured and valued.
Absolutely. And clearly our students learn fast or slow, starting in anatomy or starting in an action. There's so many students and so many ways to approach it. And I think what I see and feel when we do this project, Sarah, is that we love the technique and we really believe in these principles. And so we come at it through who we are, what we've studied, but the manifestation is so unique. A long time ago, when I did my doctorate in education, it was about collaboration, how to work with people who are different. So I brought together high school teachers over 8 years to talk about teaching. It was not easy. And I think that what we are doing in an Alexander context, we are doing something similar. We come from different backgrounds. We've had different life experiences, but we both love Alexander technique and we both love teaching, so that we can bring this together in a way that I find interesting. And I just want to say to the viewers that you could take your time with it. You can pause at any moment and go back or forwards and use this as a teaching or learning or a conversation tool for you with whomever you find would be interested in that.
And please be in touch with us if you want to write to us. We've given you our emails in the last slide at the end of this presentation.
And we would love to hear from you.
Yeah. Thank you.
Thank
Great
you.
to be with you.
Likewise.